This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Hey, what's up, and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. Ton of questions to get into. Let's just do it. All right, David says, Quincy, love your channel. In your opinion, could Hudson be moved to inside guard and be better than at tackle? I hate to see a wasted draft pick, but he's just not adequate currently, even as a backup. I would disagree with that. I think we have a very spoiled notion in Cleveland of what backup quality play is. And James Hudson has been a fine backup. He will be a backup in the NFL after he leaves Cleveland. He might continue to be the backup in Cleveland. He's not a bad backup. As far as seeing a wasted draft pick, I don't think getting a backup right tackle for 3 years out of a 4th or 5th round pick is a waste. Again, 4th, 5th round picks, if you have any utility for them in your team over the length of their rookie deal, that's a win. That's a win. I think sometimes we talk about these 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks like they're 1st round picks, and we got 1st and 2nd round expectations for him. He was like a 5th round pick, dog. Like, yeah, backup, spot starter. It's good value for a 5th round pick. You're not always going to get starters there, especially on the offensive line in the 5th round. And it's not even the norm to get starters in the offensive line in the 5th round. All right, let's move on to the next question, which is Paul Peterson, who says, since we have 2 really good right tackles, could Jack Conklin or DAWAND Jones move to left to shore up that position? No matter how many times I answer this question pops up the most. And the answer to this question is always no. It's not as good as an ideal as you think it is. The reason the Browns aren't going to do this is because switching from right to left tackle is much more of a task than I think people make it out to be. And the Browns have determined that DAWAND Jones is going to play right tackle. If they had any interest in him playing left tackle, they would have started to train him at left tackle. They have more than enough opportunity to put DAWAND Jones at left tackle. They could have done it this year at camp with Jed Wills out at the beginning of it. They're not going to do it. And the reason they're not going to do it is because we are greatly underestimating the amount of tackles who can switch there. And it's not necessarily you have to be this good of a tackle to play the left side. It's just natural. And the right side comes naturally to DAWAND Jones, which means his left side isn't going to be natural to him. Some guys can flip, some guys can't. And if they've made the determination that DAWAND Jones can't flip, that's just it. And Jack Conklin, 10 years into his career, he ain't flipping a left tackle either. And even if DAWAND Jones could flip, there would be some concern about if you would make that decision with DAWAND one this early in his career, right? He's only in his 2nd year. You want him to get a good base before you start moving him around all willy-nilly. And we saw what that did for Browns prospects in the past, where we had regime change over regime change, changing position of this player or changing role of this player, and that player never was able to develop. You want to keep a player in a role for a little while so they can develop in that role. They have decided the right tackle is that role for DAWAND. It doesn't make as much sense as we want it to make to switch one of these tackles to the left side. If this were Madden, go crazy. But when it comes to real life with switching tackles to the left side, it's just not that simple. There's no simple solution for it. It's going to just have to be Jed Wills, and you're going to have to hope that Jed Wills plays more consistently than he did last year. And I think that's something that could happen with Jed. It's not doom and gloom at the left tackle position, but these like Hail Mary, let's flip one of these tackles to the left side, it's not going to work. Even if it did and you move DAWAND Jones to the left side, that means you're relying on Jack Conklin to stay healthy for a year. That hasn't happened in forever. So what happens when Jack Conklin goes down? You got DAWAND Jones at left tackle. This is best case scenario. That's saying that the switch goes good, right? Now you have who at right tackle? You got what? You starting your backup at that point, right? You're starting James Hudson at right tackle, but you have DAWAND at left tackle. Or you're going to be, oh, let's just cross the tackles, right? Let's put Jedrick Wills at right tackle after playing left tackle for 4 years. And what if that ends up being a big disaster? There's too many variables. There's too many moving parts. They're not going to switch the tackle positions. They're going to play Jed at the left side. They're going to play DAWAND at the right side, and they're going to figure out what they're going to do with Jack Conklin once he gets back from injury. But, you know, as much as I get asked this question, the answer never changes. The Browns aren't interested in flipping these guys, and there's good reason for that. It's not as simple as we make it out to be. Do you think, and this is from Terry, do you think Jerry Jeudy can make a big enough jump learning behind Cooper in his second year to make him a serviceable wide receiver number one? I know the Browns are hoping Coop will somewhat be a mentor to Jeudy, but yet another year, Jerry Jeudy in a new system makes me cautious about the Browns' option once Coop steals up. If they don't give him an extension and he's out after this year, best case scenario to me is that Jeudy finally breaks out. Browns don't have to spend that much draft capital or money on a new star receiver, much appreciated from Omaha, Nebraska. I think if the Browns are still a competing team, right, if they are a championship contender by the end of this season, or they won a championship, they're going to keep Amari Cooper. The expectation for Jerry Jeudy isn't to replace Amari Cooper as the number one wide receiver. The expectation for Jerry Jeudy is to be a really solid Z receiver for the Cleveland Browns, right? Like switch him up, put him in a slot sometimes, but he's going to play the Z. That's what the expectation is for Jerry Jeudy. If they lose Amari Cooper, they will either sign somebody in free agency. It's going to be a big free agent class next year at wide receiver, or they're going to draft somebody in the first round or trade for somebody that they think is a prospect to be a number one wide receiver. I don't really think it's that messy to replace Amari Cooper if they want to. And I think we're going to be in one or two scenarios. Either the Browns are re-upping, they're trying to win it all, they bring back Amari Cooper to re-up, or they realize that, or something happens this year where it makes them feel like they're not as close as they would hope they could be to a championship. And that means that you would want to get younger players to reload for a window that's a couple of years down the line and not necessarily next year. So either way, I don't see a huge need for Jerry Jeudy to become the number one wide receiver. And we need to make that very clear. They're only paying him $17 million. He's not being groomed to be the new number one receiver. He's groomed to be a Z, right? A number two option traditionally is how people would put it with him. Rob has this question. Says, with new teams like the Colts, Titans, Jets expected to make leaps within this year, does it suggest that some of the top tier teams in the AFC fall a few slots? If so, what teams are more likely to make a step backwards? Well, first of all, I wouldn't guarantee that the Colts, the Colts or the Jets are guaranteed to make any type of leap, even with Aaron Rodgers healthy. I got questions about the New York Jets. Now, and also Aaron Rodgers is old and he's coming off an Achilles injury. Like, how we be trashing Russ for being old. We be trashing Kirk Cousins for being old, but like Aaron Rodgers is older than all of those guys. And he's coming off of an Achilles injury. Like, if we can clown the Falcons for Kirk Cousins coming off an ACL injury, I mean, you got to at least look at Aaron Rodgers coming off of an Achilles injury at like 38 years old or 39. So I don't think the Jets and the Colts are guarantees to be anything. I think the Colts could be good. Depends on what they get out of Anthony Richardson. The Texans are a team where I'm like, hey, they could be good, and a lot of people expect them to be good. I think they're trying to accelerate the timeline a bit much right now, and that could cause some issues. It might be a 2022 Bengals situation or 2021 Bengals situation where they jump all the way to the Super Bowl. It might be a situation like what happened in the Browns in 2019 where they took a step back because it was too much too soon. So with the AFC, you're just gonna have to let it play out. There's a lot of good teams in there. A lot of us thought the Chargers were deadlocked to be a playoff contender last year. They didn't even come close to making the playoffs. So I hesitate making these big bombastic projections about what are the pillars of the AFC right now. There's a lot of good teams. And you're just gonna have to let the season play out because you don't know who's gonna get hurt. You don't know who's gonna be hot at the right times. All of those things. You just got to let the season play out. I don't look at it as slots available. There's 7 playoff spots to get. And it's every team in the AFC's job to go get those 7 spots, however you get it. It's not like you just get automatically awarded a playoff spot based on reputation, right? This ain't college football. All right. Gaggins says this. The respective franchise actually has a significant amount of say in their preseason schedule. Do you think the reason the Browns play their final preseason game in Seattle at night is on the road to get a better West Coast setting? No, I don't. It's not that complicated. Just like you said, teams have a lot of say in what their preseason schedule is going to be, but at the end of the day, it's just a game of pick 'em, like who's available. Everybody's playing a preseason game the 3rd week, so it's a game of who's available. And if you're the home preseason team, then you have a lot of say. And if you're the Seattle Seahawks, well, you're not going to play this game at 5:30 for a West Coast audience. You're going to want to play this game at 7 o'clock. For your West Coast audience, right? Because you want people to buy tickets to come to that game. They're not going to buy a ticket to come to a game on Saturday at 5. They're going to buy tickets to come to a game at Saturday at 7, which means you're going to schedule that game for 7 o'clock. And because this isn't the NFL with their kind of predetermined time slots, the team kind of gets to decide what time they want to kick off. Well, if you're Seattle, it makes sense to kick off at 7 o'clock. What that means for the Cleveland Browns, since we're an East Coast team, is that we're just going to have to play at 10. Like the Browns really ain't got no say in that. That's up to the Seahawks. That's up to the people who own the building that the Seahawks play in. It might be a situation where there's a Sounders game in the middle of the day, and then they need to have time to clear the field. So the only time they can play with their current leases is at 7 o'clock. And they're not going to change that because the Browns want to play a preseason game earlier. Like, this is just what they're stuck with. I don't think the Browns decided that they want to play a preseason game at 10 o'clock. I think the Seahawks decided that they wanted to play a preseason game at 7 o'clock Pacific time, which means that the Browns have to play a playoff game at 10 o'clock Eastern. That's really it. It's not that complicated. UK Browns fan says, with Coop getting a pay raise instead of an extension, do you think that they're banking on Jeudy to make a big leap this year, or do you think they're happy to pay for the production and will pay whatever the Coop deal is he can earn himself this year? I think they're in a wait and see pattern. They're waiting and seeing what this team is going to be. They're waiting and seeing what Deshaun Watson is going to be. And the thing with Amari Cooper is Amari Cooper makes a ton of sense if Deshaun Watson plays well and proves that he can be a top 5 quarterback for the next couple of years. Amari Cooper on the roster does not make sense if you do not trust Deshaun Watson after this year to stay healthy. So if one thing is true, then I think you extend Amari Cooper and you keep him here because it would make sense to have him as long as you have Deshaun Watson because they have chemistry. But if you don't really have trust that Deshaun Watson is going to get another contract outside of this one with the Cleveland Browns, then it really wouldn't make sense to extend Amari Cooper because Amari Cooper doesn't make sense on a team that's looking for a new quarterback. Like, he'd make you better, but he don't fit your window, right? You're looking for players who are going to be 24, 25 because you want them to be in their prime by the time you're going to be really good. And you're deciding that you're going to move on from Deshaun Watson after this contract. And that means you're waiting a couple of years for that to be the case, which means you want younger players on the roster. And you're probably going to ship out a lot of those 30-year-olds on the roster right now. So that's why I think this whole thing is, right? It's all about 2026. They got to figure out how they feel about Watson. They got to figure out if they think that that's going to be somebody who gets an extension in the future. They also have to figure out, okay, if that's the case, if Watson is somebody we have determined is going to get an extension based on his play in the Cleveland Browns uniform, then who are we putting around him? Right? Who does it make sense to put around him? Or the other side of it, which is if we don't think it's a good idea to extend Watson after what happens this year, then what does that change about who we have on this roster so we can be good as soon as possible whenever we move on to the next guy? It's really, I think, the question there with Coop. There's a lot of room there to make a deal, but if it's not, they can eat the 20 million, they can eat some money, and then they'll just be soft rebuilding for the next couple of years. CJ says, according to Zagura, Isaiah Maguire is further along at this point than Alex Wright was in his second year. If that's true, if Alex Wright takes another step, plus Miles and company, do you think this would be even more fun than last season? I don't know how much Isaiah Maguire getting better would change the picture on the Browns defensive line, because quite frankly, the Browns are stacked on the defensive line, and that means they don't really have a ton of room for Isaiah Maguire to step up. But sure, I mean, like, the more depth, the better. Like, if you have an injury on that line, I think that'd be something to benefit you if Isaiah Maguire could step up. If DAWAND Jones getting snaps at both tackle positions at training camp, could he steal the job from either Wills or Conklin? I think he already stole the job from Conklin. Like, I don't see how Conklin comes back in here and becomes the starter again, unless they're going super seniority. But it's a new offensive line coach. Like, I don't imagine it's going to be on seniority with this. Could he take snaps at both tackle positions? No, he's not taking snaps currently at both tackle positions. He's only taking snaps at the right side. And could he still Wills his job? I highly doubt it. Doesn't look like that's what they're aiming for. And that might be for the best, right? You have a gem in DAWAND Jones. And instead of trying to figure out if you can flip him to left and he could still be a gem, let's just develop this gem. Do what they did with Tristan Wirfs. They put Tristan Wirfs on the right side for like 3 years. They developed him. Let him develop, right? Okay, 1 year, 2 year, he became an all-pro at right tackle. They developed him. And then they said, hey, Tristan, can you play left tackle now that you're fully developed? And then they moved him there. Let's let DAWAND Jones develop before we try to flip positions and shit. Like, we did the same thing with Grant Delpit, where we let him develop before we started moving him around the field. We did the same thing with JOK. We gotta let these dudes develop before we start trying to make them hybrid players. Like, that's stuff the Browns used to do that made them garbage. They need to let these guys develop. Like, if it becomes a situation where DAWAND has to play left tackle, okay, then they'll do that. But as far as, like, if things are going to plan, I think they want to let DAWAND develop at right tackle and then see what he can do in the future. But I don't think they're like in this rush that everybody else is in to have DAWAND play left tackle. Andy says, can we expect Newsome and Tomlinson to get back? So Greg Newsome and Dalvin Tomlinson. Greg Newsome, he had surgery on a hamstring. They feel fine that he's going to be able to come back before the season starts. So, yeah. And with Dalvin Tomlinson, it was a knee scope. So I'd imagine he'd be able to come back too. So I think the one I would be worried about is Newsome. Like, you hear a knee scope and a 300-pounder and you do get a little nervous. But it just sounds like a scope. It doesn't sound like anything crazy. So I think he's fine there unless there's a complication. Greg Newsome, probably a little bit more concerning that he had surgery on the hamstring, because it's more about how he works back from that surgery than anything. And there could be all kind of complications when it comes to a soft tissue, hamstring injury, especially because, you know, with corners, those soft tissue injuries can be crazy. Jose says, what's the plan with the top 3 offensive tackles? Jed's going to play left. I'm pretty sure it's going to be DAWAND at right. If not DAWAND, then it's Jack. That's the plan. I don't think they're going to be trying to cook up anything crazy. I don't think they're going to try to put Jack Conklin at right guard or something like that. I think they're just going to roll Jed out there at left. They paid on the 5th-year option. You paid on the 5th-year option because you wanted to play left. If they did not have any confidence in Jed Wills, they would have not paid that 5th-year option. If they thought DAWAND could play left tackle, they would not have paid that 5th-year. If they wanted DAWAND to play left tackle, they would not have paid Jed the 5th-year option. They paid Jed the 5th-year option. He's playing left tackle. That is it. There's no question about that. Right tackle is a little bit more interesting. I think with Jack Conklin missing the beginning of camp, and who knows how much of camp he's going to miss coming off an ACL injury, if it were me, I would start DAWAND. I wouldn't really be thinking about it. But maybe there's some kind of locker room issue where you might have to, like, for politic reasons, put Jack Conklin out there. I don't know. But it should be DAWAND. Like, that's who it makes sense to start. But that's going to be it for Q&A. Y'all, thank you for the questions. Everybody have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.